Is two-tier policing set to become two-tier law? Well, the Labour Working Group on a definition into Islamophobia has submitted a draft definition to the government. The BBC took a sneak peek just before Christmas, and the definition, or the word to be defined, has changed from Islamophobia to anti-Muslim hatred, but now it's anti-Muslim hostility, and that word is quite vague. Now, there's been conflation so far already in the courts between Muslims and Islam, and many people, especially those who are pro-free speech, are worried that a definition like this is so vague it could infringe on Brits' rights to speak. So here to discuss all of the potential consequences is Steven Barrett. The reason I wanted to talk to you is about a month ago, the BBC was given exclusive look at the draft anti-Islamophobia definition, and I think it went under the radar a little bit because everyone was winding up for Christmas, and it's just stayed with me since, and so I thought for my viewers' sake we'll have a look at it. I'll read out the definition that the BBC has seen and then we can have a discussion if that's okay. It says anti-Muslim hostility is engaging in or encouraging criminal acts, including acts of violence, vandalism or property, and harassment and intimidation, whether physical, verbal, written or electronically communicated, which is directed at Muslims or those perceived to be Muslims because of their religion, ethnicity or appearance. It's also the prejudicial stereotyping and racialization of Muslims as part of a collective group with set characteristics to stir up hatred against them, irrespective of their actual opinions, beliefs or actions as individuals. It's engaging in prohibited discrimination where the relevant conduct, including the creation or use of practices and biases within institutions, is intended to disadvantage Muslims in public and economic life. Now, my concern here is that we were told at first this was anti-Islamophobia, then it was anti-Islamic hatred, and now it's come to hostility. And I feel as though we've seen already in the legal system how there's been a bit of a conflation between Muslims and Islam. And do you think that with a definition like that, if it were to go ahead, people would fall foul of it if they showed hostility to the ideas of Islam that anyone who's not a Muslim would naturally show?
Yes, and there were very concerning parts of that alleged definition. I hate bad lawyers, and that definition is written by a bad lawyer. So I think what we should all do is self-identify as Muslims. Okay? Then we can't be accused of doing anything that's bad against Muslims because we wouldn't do that to ourselves, officer. And this is where you end up with, because when you look at that, it's inviting conflict. It's inviting people to say, Islam is a monotheism. That's a type of religion where there is only one God. And monotheisms, if one is kind to them, they have a tendency to fracture and to fall apart into different sects. Christianity is exactly the same. Christianity fractures. That's why you have, I'm from the Church of England. We have Roman Catholics. We have Greek Orthodox. You have all sorts of different factors within a monotheism. It invites something like the Shia Islam or the Shia Muslims to say that Sunni Muslims aren't real Muslims. Or maybe the Sunni Muslims will say that the Alawite Muslims aren't real Muslims. And this is just inviting sectarian conflict. Over what? Over hurty feelings. And this is not in any way well-intentioned. This is Marxist identity politics. It's designed to cause tension. I was out, or as far as I was concerned, on social media defending Muslims today because the far left are trying to insinuate that Muslims hate dogs. Now, if you know the non-Muslim British people, you know they love dogs. So that's just an obvious red flag to cause chaos and stress between British Muslims and non-British Muslims. But my dogs, I have two. I have a beagle called Bella and a Labrador called Biscuit, and they both have loving Muslim friends. So do not tell me that Muslims hate dogs, or all Muslims want to hate dogs. This is all that's going to happen. It's a very flabbily written law, and it will be used to silence people. This is so obvious now, I'm almost bored of the communist censorship control regime that we live under.
They're talking about Muslims being defined as an ethnic group.
Yeah,
it seems very contradictory, almost so vaguely written that anything that you do that they don't like, they can come after you for.
Well, it's almost the definition is itself committing the crime. They missed that. But that's what's going on in their flabby definition, and we should always avoid racializing any religion. We only do it to two religions, and that's for the simple and and I don't like it as law because it's a bit messy as law. It really shouldn't have to do it to any religion, because a religion should be something that you voluntarily belong to or voluntarily leave. But there are two religions where the bad people who want to hate them and murder them never let them leave. They never let them convert out. And that's Judaism and Sikhism. So we treat those as special categories. I absolutely admit it's an inconsistency in our treatment of religions. We don't do it because we want to be inconsistent. We do it because we have to combat the bad people. Christianity is not an ethnos. It is not a race. Islam is not an ethnos. It is not a race. The country with the largest population of indigenous Muslims is Indonesia. Now, you are not telling me that Indonesians are the same race as any other large Muslim population country. And it's just absurd. It's just absurd. Islam is too big and too successful to be treated in this patronizing way, to be perfectly honest. If I was a Muslim, if I were a Muslim cleric, I'd be extremely offended by this. How dare you tell me that my religion, which has so many billion adherents, and has such a long history, it needs now, in the 21st century, in 2026, to get special protection from hurty words. It's nonsense.
As you say, it's presenting Muslims in a way that they're being victimized by the rest of us. But we've just learned in the last week that there's a convicted Islamist terrorist standing for election in Birmingham. That doesn't tell me that it's a country where Muslims are persecuted. If you look at the number of people who have died as a result of terrorist attacks, the number of people who have died at the hands of Islamist terrorists is 100 times the number of Muslims who have died at the hand of any other kind of extremists. So do you think that Labour has capitulated to the Islamists?
Quite possibly. I strongly suspect it's less sophisticated than that. I think this is just Marxist identity politics. And what they want to do is to cause conflict between ordinary British Muslims and British non-Muslims, both of whom should live in peace and harmony and get on with each other as we always have done. And I see all of this stuff now as deliberately provocative. I don't see the left and the Marxist left, which is what we're under. I don't see them as genuine in their protection of any of these identity groups. I've seen it with my own, identity group. I am openly bisexual, which means I am part of, with lesbian and gay and bisexual people. We're same-sex attracted people. They teamed us with a plus symbol and a load of people I wouldn't let anywhere near my kid. Okay, let's be absolutely clear about this. And they said, oh, enjoy, have a party together. No, I don't want to be with these people. And I think they only did it to tell heterosexual people, oh, these people are dangerous, attack them. I think that these are very divisive people. I'm almost at the point now with the left where everything they accuse you of is what they are. Okay, so they all accuse Mr. Trump of being in the Epstein files, and then they end up in the Epstein files and he's not there. And it's just getting to the point where I really don't believe you. And so when they say we're doing this to protect Muslims, I really don't believe you. And it does upset me on a personal level. So I've mentored many children from poor backgrounds in our country into universities and good jobs. Obviously, that means I have some Muslim mentees. I consider them my spare children. I consider them my extra children. I want them to succeed. They don't call for any of this. They don't want special protection for hurty feelings. It's absolute tosh. And I think it's designed to spread division. And I think we need to call it out. I tell you what, let's not just self-identify as Muslims. Let's say that the definition itself is committing the crime. Let's report the definition to the police as criminal, because it is. It's caught itself up in its own coattails, and it's nonsense. The earlier part of it, by the way, just for your listeners and viewers, is illegal anyway. You're not allowed to pick on, if you commit any illegal activity, a crime, and it's racially or religiously aggravated, then that's already illegal. And then it was the words after, the bit that went into the hurty feelings, and that's just nonsense. It's not sustainable on any level. And why Islam? And the only reason I can find is that they want to cause strife between British Muslims and non-British Muslims, all of whom, as far as I'm concerned, should do and do live in peace.
I think, oh yeah, the FSU, this Free Speech Union, has made the same point. You know, this can increase hostility towards Muslims when probably the majority of them just don't want or need this. They're already covered by discrimination law. Because of your background in legalese, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how this would really be a departure from the historical tradition of our law.
Well, it's sadly not a historical departure from the last 15, 20 years of our badly written toffee-like law. This sort of gibberish has been being made law for that long without anybody paying attention. What has changed is, thank goodness, journalists like yourself and news corporations like GB News are finally paying attention to this. They are deliberately making laws that don't work. So I'll just say this because you probably live in terror of your regulator, but Ofcom doesn't work because its laws don't work. Now, its laws were made in the 2003 Communications Act, and we can go and read that. And just like this definition, it's complete toffee that trips itself up on its own coattails and doesn't make any sense. But because Ofcom doesn't make any sense, it sort of acts like a bully, although thankfully you challenged it in court, so actually it's backing down much like a bully now, and it's just becoming a damp squib. But there are no clear rules governing Ofcom. This is also an appalling, unclear rule. If we took a time machine back to 2003, and I probably looked more respectable back then. But anyway, if I'd stuck my head above the parapet and said, by the way, this is a really badly written law, lawyers older than me, people like Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer would have said, Stephen's entirely wrong. What absolute nonsense. And non-lawyers would have believed them. They would have believed, oh, Stephen is just a young man, doesn't know what he's on about. Obviously. It's now becoming, I think, obvious to everybody that they are writing really bad laws. They've done it for years. It's not new. And it paralyzes the police. I do believe that there are bad, politically captured police officers. I'm sorry, but there are. There are also really decent police officers who are trying to do their best. But if you're a police officer in this country, you don't have a law degree. They don't. You don't have this massive they don't spend all their day reading the law. So how on earth are they to know what the law is? Our criminal law in particular should be as simple as anything, so obvious that anybody can read it. It's unfair to have complicated criminal law because the law should take people as it finds them. A mistake of law is no defence. Ignorance of the law is no defence. That means there's a duty on the people who create criminal laws to make them understandable by everyone. And by everyone, that does mean every adult in our society. And, that means as clear as day. And they are absolutely failing. And this definition simply piles more rot on top of rot. And that's basically all our country is now.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for that. We'll keep an eye on this. The draft definition went to Labour in December, so I'm sure we'll hear in the coming weeks whether Keir Starmer is giving it the seal of approval. Thanks again.
Thank you.